Rogers TV. This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hello and welcome to HealthLink, a program connecting home, community, and healthcare. My name is Carol Merton, and today I'm delighted to welcome two guests to the program. In no particular order, Cierra Garrow, who is a clinical director, and also Faye Moreau, who is a clinical intern. And they're both here because I wanted to learn more about psychotherapy. This was something that it's new to me. It's new, the concept. I'm just really interested in learning more about it and how it can help members of our community. So I want to welcome you both to the program. Thank you so much. So, psychotherapy. Wow. Thank you for sending me the questions. And I'm wondering if you'd take a moment first just to introduce each other a little more than just your names. And then we can move forward to learning more about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Cierra Garrow. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the founder and clinic director of Cambrian Counseling and Wellness. So this is a clinic that started in 2023 with the goal of creating a space where mental health care feels accessible, innovative, and is client-centered. We offer unique approaches like walk and talk ecotherapy and equine-assisted psychotherapy, which brings in nature into that healing journey. And we partner with many local businesses in the Grey Bruce region. I'm a registered psychotherapist and a clinical supervisor. And then my colleague here, Faye, is a registered psychotherapist qualifying at our clinic. And I'll pass the mic over to Faye to further introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Faye Moreau. I currently live here in Meaford. I'm a registered psychotherapist qualifying. The qualifying means that I can practice psychotherapy under clinical supervision to provide guidance as well as ensure I'm adhering to best practices. Cierra is my clinical supervisor in this case. So that's the main difference because people ask what the qualifying means. So just thought I'd throw that in there.
And you're hoping to be finished the qualifying part by?
It all depends on how many, there's a certain number of hours, like client hours you have to accumulate before you can apply to be a full registered psychotherapist. So it all depends.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, Cierra, if you want to talk about what you hope people will get out of this segment. What are the chunks of information that we can share?
Definitely. So the whole entire world of psychotherapy has a lot of different jargon in it, a lot of different words that mean the same thing but sound different. And so a lot of times when people are looking for mental health support, they don't know who to go to or what to look for or what words to even search. And so today, Faye and I are hoping to further elaborate on the different roles within psychotherapy to know who to go to for what, how to go to a registered professional and determine someone's credentials, if they might be a good fit for you or not. And then also talking about how to access psychotherapy. So different funding programs that might be available, different things that people may not know are accessible to them. So we'll talk a little bit about that access to care and how people can get into mental health care that they need to be healthy.
Excellent. And before we go into the defining of the roles, and it may be that the producer will run this as a banner. I can't see that, but you mentioned a clinic, and I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience, if hopefully we've twigged their interest already, they have questions, how can they reach you to find out more?
Yeah, definitely. So you can reach us online at CambrianCounselingandWellness.com. All of our information you can text us, call us, email us. There's a contact submission form. You can reach both out to myself or Faye. And so I believe the number will be posted online along with the email best to reach us. So people can definitely reach out if anything resonates or they have any questions. Faye and I are happy to further explain any of the content we discussed today.
Excellent. So there are a lot of terms and there's psychotherapy versus counseling versus psychiatry versus life coach. I'm confused. Faye, help me out here.
So psychotherapy is different from counseling. Psychotherapy is a controlled act, meaning that a regulatory college of some sort needs to be regulating that controlled act. There's actually many different regulatory colleges that people can practice psychotherapy under. Of course, there's registered psychotherapists. They're governed by the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. But psychiatrists can practice psychotherapy. So can like a family doctor, like GP. So can a nurse practitioner. So can psychologists. So can a psychological associate. So can an occupational therapist, a nurse, and social workers.
Wow.
So those are all people that can perform the protected active psychotherapy, because when they practice it, they have a certain set of standards, knowledge, competency, ethics, etc., enforced by their regulatory college to ensure that they're providing high quality care and also minimizing the very real harms, the very real risk of harm that comes with any sort of healthcare, because psychotherapy is healthcare. It carries risks if it's not done with a certain level of skill and competency.
So as you're naming all of the different ways and individual groups who can perform psychotherapy, do they all have the same depth of training? I mean, is it different based on?
It's very different. So psychiatrists, okay, so I made a little Venn diagram. I'm not sure if you guys will have a chance to put that up, but psychiatrists, as well as medical doctors and psychologists and psychological associates, can both diagnose mental illnesses. Only psychiatrists and medical doctors and nurse practitioners can also prescribe psychiatric medication. Then in my little bottom circle that I drew, there's psychotherapists, occupational therapists, nurses like RNs, social workers can provide psychotherapy. So I can't diagnose, I cannot prescribe medication, but I can assess and provide psychotherapy.
So there's some bumper pads between what some people can do and what others can do. And that's helpful for me because I wouldn't have known that until you actually explained it. So therefore, there's different levels of training that's required based on what each group is able to do under their regulatory college. Yeah, okay, that's helpful. So how do I verify the qualifications? Like, where would I look to be confident that either the individual or the category has qualified for this?
Yeah, Faye, do you want to speak to that or do you want me to?
But
Yeah, so whenever we're dealing with a regulatory or regulated profession, really, there's a regulatory body that governs that profession. And so their entire function is actually to protect the public and act in the best interest of the public. So they promote confidence in the profession. They create the transparency. They may create, stipulations and ethics that we have to follow under them. And so whenever you're having a clinician, you can actually verify on the different regulatory body websites their licensure. And so you can put in their name. Sometimes you can put in the clinic address, the actual clinic name. Any of those identifying features and their location should pull up in the database if they are registered and what their registration status is, because it's more than just having the license number. It's, are you retired? Are you still working towards full licensure, which means you have limitations on your license? So for example, a fully registered psychotherapist can practice technically without having a clinical supervisor, whereas someone with a qualifying status is still required to have ongoing and consistent supervision. So the type of license they have actually differentiates the services they can provide and what that looks like. And so it's important as a member of the public when you're looking for a professional and wanting to ensure that they are regulated, because that's also important for coverage, oftentimes under insurance and benefits, that they're in fact have an active license that they're in good standing with the regulatory body, which means that there hasn't been any accusations or reports, there hasn't been any sanctions put on their license that they can't practice, for example, maybe with certain populations, and provides that transparency to make an informed decision of, is this person being monitored and have been determined, through the various colleges quality check kind of assurances they have that they meet the credentialing to be providing this service.
That's really helpful. One of the names or groups is also, I see from your notes, Master in Education or Divinity. And tell me more about that, because I understand they can give spiritual guidance, but I was surprised by that.
Yeah, sure. So they would, if they're practicing psychotherapy, they would be called a registered psychotherapist. So like, it can't just be like any master's of education. It needs to be a master's of education that has like a certain level of focus on mental health. And then they take their degree and they go to the CRPO and meet all the other eligibility requirements. Same goes for Masters of Divinity, right? Their program would have had to focus extensively in like spiritual counseling and family counseling, etc.
That's helpful. Thank you. That clarifies for me. A few minutes ago, we briefly talked about insurance coverage, and that people had to be obviously in good standing, and so how do people pay for this? I mean, you mentioned insurance, but do they pay privately? Do they, how is it? Is it an employment assistance program with industries? How is it paid for?
Yeah, definitely. There's so many different ways that people can pay for psychotherapy. So one of the ways is called private pay, which is where the individual is paying out of pocket. Oftentimes, it's usually put on a visa, sometimes cash. The methods may vary from clinic to clinic about what type of payments they accept. And so that would be paying out of pocket. If you have benefits or insurance through your employer, then normally they will have a policy or agreement with that insurer and have negotiated what the coverage looks like. And so, for example, at one employer, they may cover up to $500 in psychotherapy, but another employer might be $1,500. So it's really important that you call your benefit provider and ask them, do you cover psychotherapy? What's the limit? What is the limit per session? Because sometimes they have what's called customary caps. And so you may pay, let's say, $200 for a session, but your insurer will only reimburse you $100. And so knowing how much they're going to reimburse is really important, so there's no surprises. And then you can make an informed decision if that makes sense for you or not. The other thing you want to ask is, when does your insurance start? And when does it restart? Because some people start in January, other people, it starts in April. So you want to know how long you have your insurance to be able to use. You also want to check which providers are covered to do psychotherapy. So for example, one person's insurance may only cover psychotherapy by a psychologist. Other insurances may cover social work, registered psychotherapist, occupational therapist. So again, you have to ask your insurance provider and benefits provider what designations they cover and what minimum education level. For example, a registered social worker doesn't have a differentiation between a bachelor's of social work and a master's of social work just with their license. They do with their credentialing, but some insurers will cover both. And some insurers will only cover someone that has a master's of social work. So you really just want to understand from your insurance provider what they do cover, what they don't, so you can make those informed decisions. Other avenues in which you can pay, depending on different criteria. So for example, we have the non-insured health benefit. And so what that is, it's eligible for certain First Nation and Inuit individuals. And you can find more information about that from the Indigenous Services Canada website, or calling the NHIB mental health benefits line. That can also be found on their website. And so if you meet that criteria, you can get approved funding up to a certain amount within a year that can also be reapplied for again, so it can exceed that in certain circumstances, that will actually be covered for you. There's other programs like the Ontario Structured Psychotherapy Program, which is a covered program that provides free evidence-based mental health care, specifically for adults with mild to moderate anxiety and depression symptomology. And so a great way to find some of these programs is, to get on Google or onto the Ontario Health website and specifically type in, looking for mental health support. Connects Ontario is also an excellent resource that has a wealth of knowledge and does a lot of that legwork for you with finding somebody based on what your criteria is, where you're looking, if you want online versus in person, and can help you navigate that kind of world. There's also a lot of times local charitable organizations or non-for-profits. The Canadian Mental Health Association is a common one that most communities will have a branch of, and they generally offer free or subsidized counseling. And so they're an amazing support that even if they're not able to support you in the moment, they are very well connected in their communities and can point you in the right direction. So there's lots of different ways to find what you need. And you can also always ask your physician or health provider because they're well connected too, and ask if they have any recommendations. And that's usually the best way to find someone. And then checking, obviously, again, their credentials. You'll want to interview them and just make sure they're a good fit for you, because it's really important that you feel aligned with whoever you end up working with.
For sure. It's that therapeutic relationship that we hear matters so very, very much. I guess I need help in understanding, how would I even know if psychotherapy is a treatment approach for me? What would trigger a recommendation from a physician or a nurse practitioner or any of the other designations you mentioned? And, how would I know? That's a big question. Who wants it?
Well, psychotherapy in general, you don't necessarily need to have a diagnosis or a diagnosable condition. You can simply be having like a stressful transition in work or family life. It's like I think I might need some extra support, perhaps some guidance. It's psychiatry mostly that you would need like a diagnosable condition in order to receive care. It's a big question. Like if you find yourself like, basically, I guess if the challenges that you're dealing with seem to exceed your current capacity to cope, right? Like if you're not sure of how to handle the challenges you're going through, it's not something that you know how to adapt to.
Yeah.
Then psychotherapy would probably be helpful.
So if I said, you know what, maybe I do need to have psychotherapy, can you walk me through from a patient's perspective what that might look like? What would the first visit look like? Is it just sitting and talking to people? Like maybe just generally give an idea a person could expect who's like me and doesn't know.
Yeah, I can speak to that. And so depending on the type of therapy, a psychotherapist might be using, that initial session may look a little different. And so that's a really important question to ask if you do a free initial consult with a clinician. What can I expect for my first session? How should I prepare? Because sometimes, depending on the organization, they'll want you to complete measures before you go in, which are just assessments or questionnaires that help the clinicians there understand a little bit more about you, what you're looking for, and it helps guide them in connecting you with the best fit. And then it allows that clinician to prepare for when they meet you. And so you want to kind of know what you need to have in advance, if anything. And then going in, you want to ensure, again, that goodness of fit. So, asking, have you worked with someone like me before? Is this something you feel comfortable treating? Is this something that is in your scope of practice? How do we know we're going to make progress together? What is that indicator? And if we don't make progress, how are you going to bring it to my attention, and how are we going to move forward? And so the first session is usually a lot of information. It's a lot of going over the logistics of what it'll look like, going over things like confidentiality and its limits, and then also just really getting to know one another. And so the first session can sometimes feel a little dry because it's that information gathering, but it's all very important in creating that really solid foundation for how you're moving forward. And you're always in control of how much you share or how little. And you should never feel obligated to have to answer any of the questions that are being asked of you. And you have that choice and right to answer whatever you like and to skip whatever you like. And so you are really the owner of your knowledge, and how you choose to share that is entirely up to you.
Yeah. Now, is there a time that we hear of other health disciplines where often working together, they're separate disciplines, but they interconnect? Is that something that would happen as well, where a team works on an individual to help them towards better health mentally as well as other ways? Does that happen with psychotherapy?
Do you want to answer that, Faye?
Oh, sure. I'll answer a little bit, and I'll have you answer most of it because my experience is kind of limited. But yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of people are currently seeing a psychiatrist, and then they're also seeing a psychotherapist. So the psychotherapist knows what medications they're on and how those medications are helping them, how they're not helping them. And actually kind of enhances the psychiatrist's knowledge of that person's everyday life, because it's like, okay, because I have more time with them than their psychiatrist, right? I'm seeing them for an hour every week. So I can really find out how is that medication helping them, and really help them find the words to articulate how that medication is affecting them, so they can bring that information back to their psychiatrist, because they typically have shorter appointments.
Yeah. Cierra, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely. So, sometimes when we think of psychotherapy, we only think that it has to deal with the mind and the emotions, but actually it can include that full scope of care. And that's where the team environment that you were talking about really comes into fold, because we want to be able to work together to have a full wraparound support, because us as humans, we don't exist in a vacuum. We don't exist in a silo. We're multifaceted. And so our care should also look multifaceted. Oftentimes we'll have nutritionists or dietitians involved, because the linkage between our mental well-being and our diet is significant. Things like, having citrus in the morning, for example, if you're on a medication for ADHD, will actually reduce the effectiveness of your meds. So you need to have that full scope of the team, so that everyone works together, so that the client has the most information to make informed choices, but that we can also support one another with our collective knowledge and expertise. And so oftentimes you will find multidisciplinary teams supporting one individual.
The course of treatment, I would assume, and maybe I shouldn't say that word, assume. Are we talking short, are there short term where it would be 1 or 2 visits, or longer? And how is it determined? How do you evaluate how long a treatment approach will take? Faye, do you want to talk to that in your new experience?
Sure. Yeah, so the assessment phase of treatment, typically anywhere from 2 to 4 sessions to really get an in-depth assessment to understand what is the nature of the challenge this person is facing. How deep does it go? Like, for example, is it situational, or is it something that started back in early childhood? To what extent is this impacting their functioning? Is it chronic? Is it seasonal? Is it, there's so much stuff that goes into figuring out how long the person, you may predict a person may need in therapy, but okay, you can say, at session 5, okay, this is what I think the issue is, and this is typically how long this takes. But every person's different. Things come up during the course of treatment. You may have setbacks. Sometimes they may have like huge leaps forward. It's very individualized and flexible.
Yeah. Cierra, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I can, kind of add on to that. So that initial conversation of what the duration or dosage of therapy looks like Faye is talking about, is very individual. But those conversations happen within the very first session. Because, for example, if you only have the means to pay through insurance and insurance only is covering up to $500, you have fewer sessions to work with to try to support this person. And so you structure what that looks like a little differently. You might provide a bit more home practice or a bit more individualized readings for that person to do between sessions, because your time condensed together is less. And so that will look different on everything from the presentation of symptoms, the severity of symptoms, what the client's goal and expectation is, and also what we're working with around the time. And really, that will be a conversation that continues to be active and evolving, because our situations do change. And the other piece too is that, sometimes people think, oh, if I'm going to go into therapy, this is like a lifelong commitment. I'm never going to be free of it. But really, the goal for us as therapists is to actually work ourselves out of the job. We want to get to a point where you don't need us, and that you have the tools in your toolkit to be able to manage whatever, adversity life might throw at you. And really, it can look like anything from a single session where it's like, look, I came back from holidays, my family was driving me bananas, I just need someone to talk this through with, up to I've dealt with childhood trauma and it's really impacting my everyday life. And I recognize that I need to now address it because I can't ignore it anymore. And so all of those conversations happen collaboratively with the client, and it's a decision that's made together. It's not unilateral.
I find your references to specifics really helpful. One of the things that concerns me, and I'm so glad we're having this conversation, we hear more and more about the mental health challenges and stresses that people are undergoing. And we anticipate between financial pressures, political pressures, all sorts of pressures, that people need help and may need help more. What would you say about where we are in space and how it links to the services you offer?
Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Faye?
Yeah, sure. Like it's a really difficult situation that like our province and our country in general is facing with accessibility, availability, affordability of mental health care. Like fortunately, psychiatry is OHIP covered, but there's a long wait list. Psychotherapy is more easily available, like in terms of time, but it's typically not covered. It's a really difficult situation. I'm not sure what else to say about it other than that.
Cierra?
Yeah, definitely. I can speak to it. I think, putting pressure on our political leaders and, really advocating, and also, connecting with different bodies that do advocate for mental health and do, that lobbying. If you're comfortable sharing your lived experience or your story, those are so profoundly powerful. And it helps us really move forward and push that these are people's lives.
Yes.
This is their existence within the world that it is directly impacting. And we all deserve to be healthy, happy, and living a fulfilled life. And so we're talking really about a basic human need in my mind, and really being able to bring that awareness forward, even doing small things, within your community, doing like coffee chats. Maybe there's a group of people that get together and they just casually have conversations about what's going on. Like it doesn't need to look always as formalized, as having to go to a provider. You can have ways to create community and create transparency and
connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
With Rogers TV, you can cheer on the home team from the comfort of your living room. We'll head to the rink, the field, the court, or the pitch, so you don't have to. Tune in and cheer on your local amateur athletes on Rogers TV.
There's a center back up front. There's a shot off a leg right in front of the net. Backhand shot, scores! Down the blue. Campbell's got some room. Campbell's got Barfoot with him. There's
What a shot!
What a shot! There you see him working his way in front, and he got it when he got a stick on it.